All right, so we're going to take a deep dive into something pretty wild today.
Yeah, literally wild.
Literally wild, yeah. SoCal is on fire right now. And UFC 311.
Big event.
Yeah, huge. It's
Yep.
supposed to be happening at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood just over a week from now.
Yeah.
And, people are wondering, with these fires raging so close by, will the fight even go on?
Right. I mean, it's definitely a crazy situation.
It's a little scary even to think about, right?
Yeah, totally.
So we've got the Sunset Fire near Runyon Canyon and the Palisades Fire near Skull Rock.
Yeah, a couple of big ones.
Yeah, and they're both within about 20 miles of the Intuit Dome.
Which doesn't sound like a lot.
20 miles. I
Yeah.
mean, to some folks, that might not seem that close for concern. But when we're talking about massive wildfires and their potential impact on a major sporting event,
Yeah, especially something as big as this.
I mean, is that actually really, really close?
It is really close.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hair's breadth away when you consider how fast these fires can move, depending on wind conditions and the terrain and all that.
Yeah. Right. And we're not just talking about the venue itself, right?
Right.
We're talking about protecting the safety of thousands of people.
Thousands. Yeah, attendees, fighters, staff, everybody involved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to be converging in that spot.
For sure.
And speaking of stepping up in times of need, Dana White jumped on Instagram
Oh,
and
yeah.
offered support to victims and first responders. He even called out California's governor directly.
Yeah, I saw that. He's pretty good at that, actually.
It seems like it.
Yeah.
So this isn't new for him, this kind of public display of support during a crisis.
Yeah, we've seen this before, for sure. He's done this for fighters who are dealing with personal issues or, other types of crises and natural disasters.
Right, so it seems like it's becoming part of his leadership style.
Yeah.
This mix of tough-talking promoter and community advocate.
Right, because he's both of those things.
Right. It kind of makes you think, how much of this is genuine
Yeah.
and how much of it is about public image,
Mm.
especially for a brand like the UFC.
Yeah, it's a complex question for sure. It's really hard to speculate about someone's, true motives. But one thing we can definitely say is that it resonates with fans.
It does.
Yeah, and that helps build a more positive image for the UFC,
Sure.
which is never a bad thing.
Right. So it speaks to a growing trend, I think, of sports organizations taking on a more active role in social issues and community engagement.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true.
And it's not business as usual out there in SoCal.
No.
I mean, we've already seen the Kings and Lakers postpone games at Crypto.com Arena.
Mm-hmm.
But even more telling, I think, is the Rams moving their playoff game out of SoFi Stadium
Wow. Yeah.
to Arizona.
That's crazy.
It's a big deal.
It is a big deal. It
Yeah.
really highlights how serious this is. The NFL almost never relocates games.
Yeah,
And when they do, it's a logistical and financial earthquake.
exactly.
If they're willing to make that call, it's not a decision that they came to lightly.
Absolutely. So what does all of this mean for UFC 311?
That's the big
$1
question.
million question, right?
Right.
Our sources, including Ariel Helwani, are saying that the UFC is monitoring the situation very closely. And they're prepared to move the event if they have to.
If it comes down to it.
Right? Las Vegas seems to be the likely backup location.
Makes sense.
Right? The T-Mobile Arena is open on that date.
So it's ready to go.
It's ready to go.
Wow.
But can you imagine the logistical nightmare of trying to move a massive production like this on such short notice?
I can't even imagine. Oh my gosh.
I mean, just think about it for a second.
Yeah.
The fighters, their training schedules, travel arrangements, all of that.
Mm.
Not to mention the fans who have already booked flights and hotels.
Right. It would be chaos.
It would be absolute
Yeah.
chaos. And that doesn't even begin to touch on the potential financial fallout
Yeah.
from losing pay-per-view buys to sponsorships.
Yeah. And the fighters would take a huge hit if they couldn't compete.
Exactly. It all adds up really, really quickly.
Quickly, yeah.
So it just underscores these really difficult decisions that the UFC is facing right now.
Yeah. Tough spot.
How do you balance the safety of everyone involved with the contractual obligations and financial realities of a major event?
It's a high-stakes situation.
It is. So for those of you following along at home, here's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Right now, UFC 311 is still scheduled to go down at the Intuit Dome. However, as we've discussed, the situation is extremely fluid, and the UFC is ready to make changes if necessary.
Right. But I think, this whole situation raises a much bigger question.
Yeah.
With extreme weather events becoming more frequent, how will the UFC and really all sports organizations need to adapt?
Yeah.
I mean, will we see more flexible schedules?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Will venues need to be chosen with climate resilience in mind? These are the kinds of questions that deserve a lot more attention in the future.
Definitely. So that's something for everybody to think about as we continue to follow this story.
For sure.